Hello, Talk Funders. And today again, we're joined by Jeff from The Killer Bad. And really, Jeff, I really enjoyed the main interview, which really talked about the Kickstarter page and the Kickstarter video, which is in the video description below, and really touching a little bit about the story and the development of the artwork, etc., behind it. But in this deep dive, I want to go a little bit deeper and really look at the storyline and the artwork, etc., etc. But before we start, Jeff, I have to read this out because I must admit, I watched the video, which was really engaging, and then I was scrolling down the Kickstarter page, and I came across these few lines, and that was me. I was totally hooked. And the lines are, when an elite supergroup travels to a remote island to retrieve a powerful artifact, they are stalked and killed by a super slasher serial killer. Killer Bad 1 is a grindhouse gore fest of world-shattering death and destruction. Why would you not want to buy this? It's kind of like Friday the 13th meets The Boys. And as soon as I read that, Jeff, I went, yes, that's it. That's it for me, my friend. So really, just developing what we were talking about in the main interview, I'm scrolling down, and I encourage people again just to scroll down and look at some of the lovely artwork and the story behind it. Can we really just do a bit of a deep dive about what's going to be in Killer Bad and maybe look at the other Killer Bad series as well, Jeff?
Well, of course. So, it's a superhero horror book. And in this first issue, the pastiche is superheroes meets, the slasher flick, Friday the 13th, Halloween, etc. So we meet the team, they land, they look all powerful. We get to see kind of their power sets and stuff. And then teenagers at a camp on a lake, they start going down. And so a lot of it is like how, given their superpowers and stuff, what can take them out like this? I mean, that's kind of the whole point, is they're powerful and invincible. And so you have this this superheroes or the super slasher just mowing through them. So it gets, it's kind of typical show off the superheroes' muscles, and then the gore starts up pretty quickly. And I love gore.
and then the location is basically part of the storyline is, we've seen in some of the artwork, they were jumping out of their aircraft or whatever. Is that really at the start of the whole thing?
Yes. So those preview pages that you showed in the previous segment are the first 6 or so pages of the comic. Yeah. So it moves very quickly. It's 23 pages of story. And we're jumping out of that plane on pages like 2 or pretty quickly. Oh no, we're inside that plane, that beautiful spread on pages 2 and 3, and leaping out of it by 5. So we get going, and it's just, the script was written so as to show off Jason's amazing artwork. We wanted to do this thing. We wanted to evoke these specific comics by a lot of the Image founders like Rob Liefeld and Mark Silvestri and Eric Larson. I don't know if your listeners know, but Image was in like 92, 93 or so. It was all the big Marvel artists, these mostly young guys who were selling millions of books, like Todd McFarlane with Spider-Man #1 and Rob Liefeld with X-Force #1, then Jim Lee with X-Men #1. And so they had all the power and were making all the money. And so they left to make their own comics company called Image Comics, which now is a successful and almost a completely different beast, other than its ethos remains the same in that they don't own any of the IP for what they publish, and they're really creator focused. So we were trying to evoke that with this art, and so I had to write a script that I thought could, those early Image comics is full of lots of splash pages and posing and just like making the characters look cool, and how to elevate that to maybe more modern standards of comic script writing. And that's where, the pastiche of the horror aspect came in, of like, how can we get all these good looking people posing and looking cool on the page and then turn it into a story? Because that's basically what a slasher flick is, right? It's usually good looking teens being promiscuous or like participating in bad behavior and then getting murdered on screen. So hence our rebellious teens are outlaw superheroes.
I just love that way you're playing, say, homage to those creators in the 1990s. And
Yes.
not only that, you're paying homage, but then you're also, continuing and developing that niche genre within the comic world.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, I wanted to write something interesting for myself and do something interesting. And Jason and I, we came up with the story a lot together. We work together regularly. And so we were just talking about our love of these guys and their work and how much it meant to us. Jason's from Australia and I'm originally from Texas. And we are meeting here in Brooklyn, in our 30s and 40s. And to have this touchstone of reading the same comics across the world from each other, right, at around the same age, is very powerful and meaningful, it turns out. And it made us so we're able to have this touchstone, and we're talking about it a lot. And he has some these names like War Wound in his back pocket, like those kind of ridiculous 90s names where everything has blood in it, or sport, or Deadpool, right? And so he had a bunch of those names. I had some. He had character designs. I had the memory of a script that my first attempt at a comic script while in early college in the early 90s, when this was. So I was able to kind of return to that, even though I had no written copy that I could find. I have the broad strokes in my brain still, and was able to pillage that idea and update it. But which is also kind of cool. It's using this thing that I wrote as a contemporary of those other things I'm trying to reference now, and updating it for myself even. So it was a blast of a project, and that's why we took it to Kickstarter and made it this is our Kickstarter debut. And on purpose, we haven't been pitching this around to publishers like we would otherwise, because we think we came up with a structure where each comic is a done in one, and treated more like a sequel rather than issue 2 of a story, part 2 of this smaller story. Each story takes 20 to 30 years apart from the previous one. So they really are like mini movies, and they each touch upon a different horror genre. So in Killer Bad 2 will be the revenge story, and Killer Bad 3 is gothic horror, and in the 90s feeling like Spawn, Spawn or Vertigo stuff, Hell, 90s Hellraiser. Even though we move through time, and Jason is changing his style for each issue, there is that kind of perpetual touchstone to 90s comics.
And I just love this. I just love what you were saying, that, at one point you were back going through, I think it was in college, you were saying that you were scripting it yourself back in the 90s, and I just love, and obviously Jason was in Australia probably at that time, doing his artwork, for me, that's what I love about comics, is that's a global reach, and it's and then I love the word organic, but it's all of a sudden, you were writing your early versions of this script, which is now coming 20, 30 years later together with Jason in Brooklyn. I mean, that is a great story in itself, my friend.
I mean, I think that's why it's so exciting, and why we were able to kind of knock it together relatively quickly. From that, lunch was probably 2.5 years ago. I immediately went home, and over the next few months scripted all 3. And we also have ideas for up to 5, but only 3 are fully scripted. Then that went back to Jason, and he did all the, the breakdowns, which is just the showing how each page is going to work and where the word balloons go. It's just pencil sketches. And then and then we were running. Then he was making pages. He decided to paint this first one, so it looks like, I don't know if you know the Capcom versus X-Men video game from the 90s, but the way he's painted it, it almost looks like the side of one of those video games, the art. It's it's kind of manga influenced. I know we were talking off mic about how you're being introduced to manga a little bit right now.
Yes.
And so there's definitely, and those early 90s guys obviously were being influenced by manga coming into the US at the time. And so we're definitely playing into that also. I lost my thread a bit.
I know you're grand, my friend, and I just love it. I mean, it's all I can say is I think these are going to be classics. So I'm not just saying this, but like, everybody watching all the Talk Funders Kickstarters, get down there, click on that flipping link, and get the hard copies of this, guys. Just don't mess about.
Yeah, you can also go to killerbad.com. It takes you directly to the Kickstarter.
Well, certainly whenever the Kickstarter campaign is over, and at the time of recording, it's just got a few days left. We'll also have the website link for everybody to click through to the Killer Bad. Is it killerbad.com, Jeff?
Yeah, it takes you just to the Kickstarter page.
All right. Okay, cool. So, well, thanks very much. And I have to ask, Jeff, over your shoulder is all these Marvel legends. So you live and breathe this, my friend. I mean, I get this impression that both you and Jason are living and breathing this.
I do. I feel like, I've always been a writer, I guess originally I wanted to be a comics artist, and then I just didn't have the discipline. And then was already, in college, and then I leaned towards English and philosophy, and then I moved to New York to get my MFA in fiction writing. So I have a MFA in fiction writing. That was obviously all prose writing. And then right out of that, right after graduation, I was at a party here in Brooklyn talking to an editor at Details magazine, if you remember magazines. And she was like, she had just seen the movie Sin City and was like, that was so cool. And she knew I liked comics and stuff. She's like, I want to do a special series that like mimics Sin City. Can you do it? And I'm like, yeah. And so that was my first published comics work, was a series of ads for Amstel Light that ran in Details magazine. It was a serialized comic book that advertised. And so and then it was like from then on, I just wrote comics, and I realized it was like I think in comic script more than I do in prose these days. And when I write the comics, I'm drawing them as I go, like very poorly, but so you can see the shape of a page and everything like that. So yes, I do feel like I breathe this stuff. The action figures, I had to make a hard cut. It was like an addiction that went on for about a decade, and that's the remnants of it behind me. But now all toys I buy, I'm just like, it's for my daughter. So now I have I buy every like superhero girl's doll, and she's like, oh, thanks, Dad. She doesn't care as much as I do.
Oh, superb. Well, thank you so much for sharing your own personal journey. And I just love, obviously, Jason has the same personal journey of just being involved. Your whole lives, really, from childhood has been all about our comics. And really, I mean, that really comes through in the Kickstarter video, which please everybody click through and watch it. You're living and breathing a comic life, my friend, and it really shines through on that Kickstarter page. And so I really would recommend everybody to click through the Kickstarter page, and in time click through to the killerbad.com website as well. And please follow these guys, because I think there's going to be hopefully you'll please come back to Talkfunding again whenever you're launching number 2 and number 3, and hopefully maybe
I would love to,
whenever you're going to whenever you've got 4 and 5 scripted. I would love to be doing these series of interviews.
Yeah, let's do it.
Wouldn't that be great? Like just your progression, like through the whole lot, And
now we didn't talk about that video, by the way. I know you had some 501 Jeans questions.
Yes, yeah. What was this? What was the start of that? It was like, what was that about the fly? I can't remember.
Okay. So this is a real Levi's jeans commercial from 91. I want to say 91, 92, starring Rob Liefeld and directed by Spike Lee. And so we did a shot-for-shot recreation of that Levi's 501 Jeans commercial, except for just put Jason in and with our artwork from Killer Bad and said, in the Levi's jeans commercial, you can look it up, type in Google Rob Liefeld jeans commercial, and it'll come right up. It has similar music. I'm in a band called Americans UK, and we used our music. That's all the bed music in our videos is our music. And so so we had a song that matched the song that they used already. And then I was able to order all the clothes like from vintage stores across the country during the pandemic. And then my a frequent collaborator of mine, a video collaborator of mine, is Darren Morano. He is a genius. He put it all together. We filmed it in one day at Dean Haspiel, another comic artist art studio here in Red Hook, Brooklyn. And we filmed it in one day. He compiled it all together, but he's such a genius. There's a window in the room, and the studio we're in is a windowless studio. So he digitally put a window in that no one would ever know isn't a real window except for me.
Well,
Anyway.
even that story, I just love the organic creativity of the world that you guys are inhabiting. I just love it.
Yeah, well, you know, we're standing on the shoulders of giants. You know, we're referencing specific artists who existed in our lifetimes, and you know, there's a bit of a wink there, right? Like it's self-aware, but it's also obviously out of love and of excitement for this kind of like, you know, 90s superhero comics is almost its own subgenre of superhero comics, because it's, you know, it has a very specific look from a specific era. It's like watching, you know, a John Hughes movie from the 80s. You're like, oh, this is 1984 in America or whatever. So I feel like 90s, certain 90s comics have that same like echolocation, temporal location idea.
Well, Jeff, I feel that I can talk to you all day, my friend. We've got to end this in lovely and engaging interview at some point. And I really, really thank you. So I really like to thank Jeff from Killer Bad and his colleagues, Jason and his other colleagues, who are really bringing forward Killer Bad 1, which is a series of at least 3, possibly 5 comics coming out. Killer Bad is still live in Kickstarter. I'll have all the links for Kickstarter in the video description below, as well as the Killer Bad website. And I might even include that YouTube commercial, the jeans commercial as well, if I can find it on YouTube.
It is on YouTube. I can send it to you.
Oh, please send it to me, Jeff.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Jeff. I really enjoyed chatting to you today, and let's do it again for Killer Bad 2, my friend.
Please, it was my pleasure.
Okay, bye-bye now.